array in C++. And we also have covered the for loop in C++, right? So we are going to in this class see that how we can store some data in an array. Okay, so array is basically used when we need to store the same data type variables, so many variables of the same data type. Let's say I want to create 100 variables of integer data type. So instead of creating that 100 variables of integer data type, what can I do is I can create an array of 100 size. If let's say I want to create a data type of string data type, a variable called name to store the name of students. So let's say I have 100 students in my school. So instead of creating that 100 variables for 100 students, what we can do is we can create an array of size 100. So basically the logic behind creating an array is that whenever we have some kind of situation where we want n number of variables of the same data type, then only we can go for array instead of creating the n number of variables. Okay, so let's say just see. Okay, so let's just say I want n number of variables, n number of variables. N means it can be anything, 10, 100, 1000. So let's say in my school there are 1000 students. So let's say I want to store the age of each and every student. So obviously I need to create int student age 1. Let's say some student 1 has age 5, the other student 2 age has 10. Let's say this will be continue like this for 1000 students. I need to create 1000 variables. So obviously this is not going to be a good way to do so, right? Because in our programming or in our regular life, we always and always try to make our make our task as much easy as we can, right? So in the same way, instead of creating that 1000 variables, I can create an array. I can create an array. And array, how array is different than the other variables? It is a contiguous memory location. We have discussed in our last class. Contiguous means, let's say I have created 5 variables of integer data type, where 1, where 2, where 5, up to 5. Okay, of the same integer data type. So it is going to take somewhere space in the memory. So this, let's say this variable has taken this space, and this variable 5 has taken this space. So it is not depend on us, and it is cannot be estimated which variable is going to take what space, right? So but in the array case, whenever we create an array, it is going to take a contiguous memory location. So let's say I have created a array of integer int array name. Let's say I want to store the age, so I will take the name age of 5 size. Okay, so this is going to take memory location in a contiguously. 5 location will be created one after another. Okay, and one more thing, every memory space has some address. Just in the same way, we are living in this world, and everyone living have their own address, right? My address is Bokaro, your address will be something XYZ, someone will be living somewhere else, other country, other state, right? So everyone has their address, right? In the same way, each and every memory, the memory is in the form of tabular actually. So each and every memory has their own address. So let's say this is one memory location, and this is going to have an address of something x, y, and t. It is not determined by us, it is totally determined by the computer, by the memory. So but the point is, every memory location has their own address. So whenever we create any variable, it is going to take any one of that, and the name of the variable, name of the address will be whatever we define here, right? But the address is not determined by us, it is automatic generated, it is automatic present there. Okay, and now whenever we create any array int age, let's say 5, then what it is going to do, it is going to create and it is going to store the data in a contiguous memory one after another. But this is not the case with different variables. So this is how an array is different than a variable. Now let's say I want to print a age value one by one of each and every student. So let's say I have created int s1, int s2 to store the age of students, s3, and this way int s5, right? So now let's say I want to print the age of this s1. So how I can do that? I will simply write cout and the s1 value, whatever the value it is going to be here, it is going to be shown in the output window, right? Let's say I want to print the value of this student 3 age, so I will write cout s3. So basically what I'm trying to say is that we need to use this variable names to print the value of that, right? But in the case of array, we can clearly see here that there is only one name for these 5 students, because the length of the array is 5 and the name of this location is age, right? Now let's say some ages are there. Let's say this is student of 5 age, this is 10, this is 6, this is 9, this is 15. Okay, so these are the ages of students. Now let's say I want to print the value of the first students, just in the same way we have done in the case of variables. How can we do that? I need to show and I need to write cout. This is obviously inside this age variable, right? So I need to write the age first of all. Now this age denotes all the 5 locations. So which one I am denoting? How it is going to be decided? So what exactly happen is that whenever we create an array, it is going to be formed in the form of indexing, means a short one, right? So this index is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and the index value always started from 0, not 1, 0. So this is age 0, age in the bracket, middle bracket, we need to specify 0. So this memory location is denoted by age 0. and let's say I want to print the value of this. So at what index it is present? It is present in the index 1. So I need to write cout age index 1. So this value is going to be printed. In the same way, cout age, the last value I want to print. So at what index it is present? It is present in the 4th index. So I need to write 4 here. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, we already have learned about okay, let's insert data in my array. Insert data in an array. Okay, this is the topic we are going to cover. Okay, so in the case of variables, how do we do that? Integer a, then we have 5, right? So integer a is basically declaration, and a is equals to 5 is basically initialization, right? Initializing a value. So in the same way, how do we do in the case of an array? So an array is a contiguous memory location of the same data type. Let's say again I have created an array of size 5. Int is 5. Okay, now I want to store data in each of them. How can I do that? I will simply write age. I want to store the data here, so how I can do that? I will write at what index it is. It is at the 0th index. I will write 0 here, and whatever the value I want to assign, I can give here. Let's say I have given 10, so this 10 is going to be submitted here, and it is going to present on the 0th index. In the same way, a is 1, and we can give some other value. Same way, a is index 4 is going to give some other value. Okay, so this is how we insert the data in our array. Okay, this is how we insert the data inside our array, and we already have seen how to show the data or print the value. So in the case of normal variables, we simply write cout and the name of the variable. So this is going to show or print the value. Whatever the value will be initialized, it is going to print that. Same way, if I want to print the value of this array, then I need to write cout and the name of the array. And since this array has multiple values, so we cannot only specify the name, because the whole location is only one name, age. So if I'll just simply specify age here, it is going to be confused which value you are trying to print. So I need to specify the index value. So when I write cout age index of 2, so index 2 is present here. So this value is going to be printed, cout age. So it is going to print 8 here. I hope it is clear how to print and how to store the data inside a array.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this is how we do statically. Until now we have learned statically values. Now some dynamic values. In the case of an array, how do we, in the case of normal variables, how we do? Let's say I just write a simple program. I will write cout enter your age, cin, and let's say I have created a variable integer age, right? So I will simply write age here. So whatever the value this user is going to enter, this value is going to store inside this age, right? So in the same way, we need to write this multiple times, right? So let's say I have created a variable array integer of 5 size, and now I want to ask for each and every student the age. How can I write a program for that? I need to write something like this: cout, enter age, and cin. The first student value should be present in the first index, right? Which means 0 index. The second student is going to store the value in the second, third. This way it is going to be continue, right? So I need to write in cin age at the 0 index. Okay. Now let's say the second user needs to be second student should be as 1th index. On the 1th index, the second user is going to store the value. So I need to write this multiple time, right? Age second, cin age 3, right? So one thing you have noticed, repetition of code. We have written the same line of code multiple times, but the only difference is we need to specify the index. 0th index 0, here it is going to store. On one index it is going to store here the value. On second one this is going to store the value here, right? So the same line of code, but only difference we need to the index value has been changed, right? So now we already have learned about for loop. Can you imagine how we can do that via using for loop? This cin age. Just imagine how we can do this via using for loop. I need to write something like this: cin age at the 0 index, right? Then again I need to write cin age at the 1 index, then cin age 2 index, second index, right? So this should be continue how many times? If we have 5 students, then this will be continue 5 times. I mean the last one would be 4 because the index value start from 0, right? So I need to have a for loop for this, so that I can only write this line of code and it is going to repeat itself, because it is a repetition of code, right? We just need to change the value of index. So for this I will write a for loop, integer I, and this I value should be start with what? 0 or 1? 0, because we can clearly see the index value start here from 0. So I will initialize here 0. And this I should be less than should be 5, right? And I plus plus, because we are always incrementing the value of index. This is our array, name is age, and this is 0 index, this is 1 index, this is 2 index, and 3 and 4. Now I plus plus, and inside this I will, instead of writing the direct value, static value, I will write the dynamic value, which means I. So at runtime what it is going to happen, let's just trial run this program, so it is going to be more easy for us. Okay, so we have a variable called I, and this I value is initialized with 0, right? I value initialized with 0. Now 0 is less than 5, right? So this condition becomes true. When this condition becomes true, this will come inside, and whatever the statements here, it is going to be executed. Now cin age at the index value of what is the I value? So it is going to evaluate as cin age index of 0, because current I value is what? 0. So it is going to be evaluated something like this, is 0. Okay, now when this is going to be executed, the user is going to enter some value, let's say 5. Okay, so this 5 value is going to be stored inside this. What is the current value of I? 0. So at 0th index this value is going to be stored 5. Now after completing this, it is going to increment the value of I, right? So I value now became 1. 1 is again less than 5. This again becomes true. So this will come inside. See in age I value currently what? So this is going to evaluated as C in age. Instead of writing I, it is going to write here 1 at runtime, right? So the at the first index, whatever the value, let's say user has entered, at the first index it is going to be stored. So this will continue like this up to I is less than 5. Now you may ask a question that let's say this I value is less than or equals to 5. We do not have any index 5, right? We do not have a index 5. We go 0 to 4, which basically have calculated as a 5th value. So we do not have any index 5. Let's say some user has entered written any code something like this is 5. Then what it is going to happen? It is going to generate an error. Why? Because we do not have any index 5 and inside this is variable we have only 5 up to 4th index, right? So we can only insert, we can only display the values from 0 to 4th index only, not lower than that, not higher than that. So this is how we are going to store the values one by one, but instead of repeating the same line of code, we are going to use the for loop for that.
One question.
Yes, please.
In the program that we written, we only define the value of I, but in our CN, we have a variable age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
So
you are basically trying to say see out statement, right?
in the CN, we have
No, no,
variable
she's saying you have not defined the age for when you are starting your loop. Can you pass on to name Anafi?
No, I do not understand
The,
actually.
yes, James.
okay,
For
okay.
our
Say,
sige,
you,
James.
yes. I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, for the C out,
See out for the
okay, when
see.
you started, when you started the for loop,
Uh-huh.
initialization and the condition,
Uh-huh.
then and then you just started by seeing in age, which is not defined.
Yeah.
Age is not defined at there. So
Okay, okay, okay. That's not a. Let's say we have created a age array here of 5 size.
yeah,
I was just trying to define this one. I was just trying to the concept of using for loop. So how, let's say this is our an array, and this how we can insert data one by one inside this array using for loop. So we can go for static values like this one, age 5 up to age 5, right? But this is a repetition of code, right? So instead of doing that, we can go for a for loop, something like this. So we have declared a variable here. This is actually not a code, this is just a pseudocode or just an explanation.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, now this is how we insert the data inside an array. Now let's say the reverse of this. I mean to print the data one by one. So how can we do that?
hello. Just for can you, if we write such a program, is it going to print it to run without giving an exception error?
Sorry, sorry.
If we run this program, for instance,
Uh-huh.
is it not going to give
it is not going. Let's just write a small program then.
Yes.
Hmm. Let's just quickly write a program for that to insert data one by one.
Sure.
Okay, so let's just create include. Okay, now here we need to declare our array. So how do we do that? Integer. Let's say I want to create an array of integer and I want to store the age, so I will give a name as age of, let's say, 5 students. So I will create something like this. Now one more thing I haven't discussed is that in the same way how we do int age, let's say I have created a variable age is equals to 9, right? So in the same line we have declaration as well as initialization, right? So we can do the same thing in the case of array as well. This is just the declaration, right? But how we can initialize in the same line? We have a special syntax for that. We need to include equals to, and after that this middle one, and after that we need to specify the values. This is of the length 5, then we need to only specify the 5 values. If we haven't specified any 5 values, then it is going to store 0 as a default values. Just in the same way as if we do not specify any value, this integer value is going to store 0 as a default one, right? So this is going to be the same as array. In an array we need to specify that this is the declaration and this is the initialization. So now this is same as this one. We have declaration and initialization in the same line. Okay, but for now let's just comment this, and I don't want to initialize this. I want to initialize this using for loop. Okay, so let's just create our for loop, and we have started from 0 because index value of array always start from 0. I is less than 5, I plus plus, because index value is always going to increment. C in age, and we are going to specify I here. I basically means whatever the value of current I is going to be, it is going to replace it at runtime when this program is going to run. And now here we need to write our return 0 statement. So let's just quickly save this program. Okay, so we have added zeros. Now it is going to ask me for 5 values. Let's say I have inserted 8, 9, 4, 2 and 1. That's it. So it is asking me for 5 values, and this 5 value, this 8 is going to be stored at 0 index, this 9 at 1th index, 2nd index, 3rd index and 4th index. Okay, now let's say I want to, this is how we can insert the data. Let's say I want to see out the data, meaning to print the data. How we can do that? In the case of in the case of a variable, how do we do that? We just simply write cout and the name of the variable, right? So just in the same way we are going to do in the case of an array. So let's say I have created integer a is equals to 5 and I want to print this value. So see, I will write cout a. So in the same way I can do in the case of an array. Let's say I have created an array of age and this age has 5 index 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So I need to print the value one by one. So I can write cout the value of first index. So cout age 0. Cout age on the first index, whatever the value it is. So this will continue like this, right? So again we have the repetition of code and we need to minimize this. So again we can see that this is the same line of code, just the value of index is going to be changed, right? So for that I will write the same for loop. Let's have a look. This is to insert the data. Insert data into an array. And this is to print the data of an array. And I want to print the data one by one. Okay, so I will create for int I is equals to 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus. Okay, and now I want to cout age and the index value is going to be changed at runtime. So for first time when I value will be 0, this is going to be evaluated as cout age of 0 index, right? In the second time when I value is going to be incremented by 1, it is going to be evaluated as cout age 1 and the index of 1. So this is how it is going to be evaluated at runtime. And now we can see the output. Let's just compile and again run this program. So now I will enter some value one by one. Okay, now it is going to show the values one by one. Can you see this here?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think it is clear to you that how we can store the data and how we can retrieve the data from our array, right? So this is how we can retrieve the data and this is how we can insert the data inside an array. So yeah, that's it I think, and you can practice some question based on an array. We still have some time, so let's just practice one more program. Let's say I want to write a program to take 5 integers value and print the sum. Let's say we do not know the concept of array. How we are going to do that? We need to take the input of 5 integers, right? So I will create 5 integers. Integer number 1, integer number 2, integer number 5, right? And after that I need to take the values from the users, right? So I will write cin number 1, cin number 2 up to cin number 5, right? And after taking all the inputs from the user, what will I do? I will create one more variable called sum and going to initialize with 0, and I will write something like sum is equals to number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3 plus number 4 plus number 5, and after that I will just simply print cout some value. Is it wrong or right? If we do not know the concept of an array, we will do something like this, right? But because we know the concept of array now, we are going to improve our program. Let's say we have only written take 5 integers here. Let's say someone asked for 100 integers. 100 integers. So do we create the 100 variables? Something like number 100. It is going to be a burden for us, right?
No, we are going to introduce.
So we are going to introduce the concept of an array. We are going to use the concept of an array. So how we actually going to do that? How we can find the sum of variables? So what we actually do is that we will first create of an array of how many size? 5, right? So I will create an array of 5 size. Now, what I will do is I will ask the user to input the numbers one by one, and I will store the numbers one by one to my array. So let's say someone has entered 5, then 6, then 9, then 8, something, anything, right? Okay. The next step would be to sum all the values. Sum all the values. So how can I do that? I will write age, let's say the name of the age 0 plus age 1 plus age 2 plus age 3, right? So this is how we are going to do, and I will introduce one more easy of that. Let's just write the program for this. I will comment this all or delete this one. Or let's say I'll just okay. Now this is the program. Take input of 5 integers and print the sum value. Okay, so for this I am going to create an array integer of numbers, because we need to store the numbers. So I'll give a name, more meaningful name, numbers of 5 size. Now the next task, take input from user one by one. So for that I will create a variable called int I is going to initialize with 0, I is less than or equals to 5, not equals to I plus plus, because we have the index from 0 to 4 only. 0 to 4 only. Okay, now I will take the value of these integers, 5 integers, one by one, and I'm going to store the values inside this number array one by one. Now I want to print the sum, right? So I need to have a variable called sum so that I can store the value of all the sums. So let's say someone has entered the value this 5, 6, 8, 9, 7. Okay. Now the question arises that whether I need to do this kind of thing, age 0, age 1, age 2, age 3, or do we have any other options, an easy option for us? Yes, do we have. What I will do is I will take a variable called sum, and after that I will write sum plus ARRI. Let me explain this. What I'm trying to say is that let's say we have a variable called sum, okay, and in this sum we are going to take value and then sum this the value. So we have first 5, so I will sum plus 5. So for first time the sum value is going to be 0, right, and this sum is going to be stored or added to this sum value, so it is going to become 5. Now we have already have I mean we already have summed this one, so we do not need to consider this now. We need to consider this now. Now we need to add these all numbers, right? So instead of taking one by one value, what we are going to do is we have created one variable called sum, and inside this sum we are going to add the values one by one. So we have already added 5 to our sum. Now what I want to do, sum plus this value. This value is 6. So sum plus 6, we already have 5 stored in our sum. So 5 plus 6 is equals to what? 11. So this 2 has been completed now. Now we need to consider this one. So we already have added these two values, right? And the sum value is 11. So now I want to store 11 plus 8. So sum plus 8. So this is going to be continue like this. So that is what I have written here. Let me just written this in more clearly. So we are going to do is sum is equals to sum plus ARR I mean numbers, our 0. Sum is equals to sum plus AR number at the index of 1. So we need to continue like this. Sum is equals to sum plus number at the index of 4. Is it confusing for you or is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
It's
It's clear.
okay, mom.
Okay. So what we are going to do, we are going to do the same here. Instead of having something like this, sum is equals to number 1, number 0 at 0 index, then we can have number 1 index. So we can do this something like this also, but we are going to use a more optimized way. So we need to write 2 second index here, then third index here, and then fourth index here. So we can do something like this as well. But let's say I want to sum the value of 100 numbers, 100 array size. So I need to write this multiple times, right? So instead of doing that, what I will do is I will create an for loop to access the numbers one by one. I is less than 5, I plus plus. Okay, so we already have our sum variable. Sum is equals to sum plus whatever the value is going to be at that index, it is going to sum the value of that index. And after that I just need to write cout the value of sum. So at runtime what it is going to happen, for the first time this sum value is going to be 0, right? And this 0 value is going to be added by the value of the 0th index. 0, 1, 2, 3, and we have a 4. So whatever the value will be present at the 0 index, this sum value is going to be added by this 0 index value. Let's say we have a 8. So 8 plus sum is going to be 8. So sum value is now, instead of 0, it is going to store 8 here. Now 8 will be added to the next number. This combination, this, then this one. Again, this is how we are going to perform the addition one by one. Okay. So let's just compile and run this program and let's just see the output. Is it working fine or not? So we need to add the number. So let's just add 1 2 3 4 and 5. What should be the output? 5 plus 4 9, 9 plus 3 12, 12 plus 2 15 should be there. Yeah, you can see the output. We have a 15 as the sum of all the values. Okay, that's it for today.